Hola amigos, ¿qué tal? For those that don't know me, my name's Andy and this is an episode of Andy's Comic Stash, where we talk about comic books and everything in between. Before I start this episode, make sure to like this video and subscribe to this channel. For any further support, links are going to be in the description below. Where we last left off, I said that I was going to go with the Legends dudes to New York for New York Comic Con, and sure enough, we did. And of course, we had a great time. The Legends booth was bumping. All our favorite people came to visit us. I actually drove in New York and New Jersey, and let me tell you, it's not for the faint of heart. Overall, the whole trip has been great, and for sure, can't wait for next year. Fun fact, about maybe 4 days later, we got invited to Ranger Stop in Orlando, Florida. Remember guys, we drove to New York, so having another driving trip to Florida, kind of crazy. And we're definitely one of those crazy people. I will mention a little bit more of that later on down in this video. This week, I'm going to talk about two books that have, kind of crossed my mind. With today's comic book racks in any comic book shop, there's always going to be those two characters you just can't miss out on. One in particular that even a third world country knows who this is. It's Batman. We all know everyone loves Batman. Hell, you could just love the Batman movies. And on that note, the book I want to mention out to you guys is Batman, Gargoyle of Gotham. Written and drawn by Rafael Grampa. Like I mentioned before, there are a good amount of Batman titles. The ones that interest me the most are the ones that are Black Label. For those that don't know, Black Label is the quote-unquote R-rated versions of DC titles. And most of them aren't necessarily violent for the sake of violence. It's just more along the lines that your typical DC title, or any title for that matter, kind of restricts some of the action, or they only hint of what may or may be. Whereas a Black Label title, they'll get into that. They won't be afraid to tell you that. But for sure in good taste. Without further ado, Batman, Gargoyle of Gotham. Maybe I should have mentioned this before. Spoiler alert. I'll wait for you. A huevo? All right, let's do it. So I will say this, the first 2 pages on this book kind of scared me a little. It really just depicts humanity at its lowest or scummiest point. And it kind of just starts off with, Gotham is this crime-riddled town, type thing. On that page, it already has like a domestic that may or may not have happened. You sadly see a homeless person with a sign that says homeless with cancer. It's like, oh man, drugs and guns. It just sets you in the mood of how Gotham really is. After those 2 very scary pages, you're kind of set in on this like basement type thing where it looks like the homeless is making drugs. And of course the guy with the gun's like, it's your shift, start doing drugs and you better not mess up. If anyone with a story sense knows, wherever there's bad, a creature from the night lurks through. And of course Batman jumps in and kind of goes, all right guys, you guys are bad guys, I'm taking you guys down. But here's the interesting part about this comic book. Apparently with everything that he sees around him, it's kind of triggering very bad memories when he was a kid. Almost ruining his like facade of like, oh, I'm trying to be Batman, but my Bruce Wayne weakness is like, oh, it's crippling me. And it did trigger him a bit more once he started going up to the area where the homeless was doing drugs. He got into that room and all the homeless is dead, apparently, sadly. It's clear that the book is telling us that the Bruce Wayne is killing the Batman vibe. Not cool. As he passes on into the room, he confronts himself with this main bad guy. Kind of looks like this like sci-fi noir. Apparently his theme, he does the violence of a certain cartoon in that universe. Specifically speaking, that cartoon is called Crytoon. Yes, the kind of gags that you're thinking of as cartoons is exactly what you're thinking about. Hammers to the head, opening up someone's head and you see the brain and they're just panicking instead of, dying. Tom and Jerry type stuff, pretty much. Sadly speaking, this character just happens to escape and explodes the whole place down. Of course, Batman survives out, but at the same time, he's just tripping that not only that the guy left, but his Bruce Wayne side is just, it's resisting him. It's resisting him for being the Batman. So as he's in his Batcave, he's talking to Alfred that he's kind of done being Bruce Wayne. He's actually deciding to kill him off so he can be a full-time Batman. And of course, you have Mr. Alfred out here saying like, no, because that is a part of you. No Bruce Wayne, no Batman. But you can relate to Bruce a little bit because those memories are just not helping him. But after more discoveries of who this bad guy might be, especially with Jim Gordon helping him out on the case, he's gonna need him more than ever. This bad guy may be tied to Bruce Wayne. And that's enough for me to tell you because you gotta read it yourself. Yes, I'm definitely picking up issue 2. I'm totally gonna pick up issue 2. What the hell's wrong with you? Of course I am. Kind of a no-brainer. Pick this one up, man. Granted, guys, this is a hot book, but definitely not an expensive one as far as I'm concerned, unless something just changed. But no, it's not gonna be an expensive one, just kind of hard to find. Second title I'm gonna mention is an indie. And of course I always recommend indies just in case you're kind of like needing a break from the superhero thing. You know? Specifically speaking, I'm talking about DSTLRY's Gone by Jock. Maybe I should mention a third book just to give you guys a clue what's going on. For those that don't know, DSTLRY is a writer and artist driven publisher. And before the book I'm about to mention, they did come out with The Devil's Cut. It's composed of 12 short stories by a bunch of artists and a bunch of writers. I'm talking talent of the likes of Jock, Brian Azzarello, Mirka Andolfo, Francesco Francavilla, Lee Garbett, James Tynion, Joel Jones, Peach Momoko, Ron V, Scott Snyder. Holy crap. Who else? A lot of talent behind this. So to set things back, let's go to The Devil's Cut with the story, The Stowaway by Jock. So you start off with this like Ravager type character leaving what it looks like a dilapidated home. Of course, mom tells him, you better come back home. And the character goes, I will, I'll be back. And as this character is running towards the outside, you can tell the whole city, like the whole town, the whole cul-de-sac just looks run down. The character sees a really huge, like I'm talking huge spaceship. In this universe, it looks like a cargo type ship, like bigger than the Titanic, about to take off. And this character goes in the spaceship, just kind of lurking around in the shadows, in the crevices, going through like the kitchens, going through like what appears to be like a whole like rich town or rich city. From that point, it kind of gives you that feeling that this character is looking for food. Of course, it seems like the character was gonna get caught up. The ship was about to take off. Character jumps out at the right perfect time and sees the big old ship just far going into the space. And that's the end of it. Like, that's how short this story is. And some of those stories are even shorter, but they all pack a punch. They treated this Devil's Cut book like a testing ground to what's gonna happen. And of course, DSTLRY comes out with Jock's story called Gone. So as I started reading it, I assumed this would be like a continuation. I think it is, but it didn't start that way. First pages kind of starts off with these soldier type people killing the people in the dilapidated homes, followed by the 2 pages that spell out the big old words Gone. And then on the next page, you see that said character that was on the first book, and her name, his or her name, I think it's her. For the sake of argument, I'm gonna say this character's name. This character's name is Abby. So you see Abby overlooking the entire dilapidated like neighborhood type thing. Plus like in the background, those big old carrier ships that I was telling you on the first book. Goes back down to see the character's mom. Of course, Abby was super apologetic that they couldn't get what they could have onto the ship, like the food. Hence why I got that idea that it'll connect. But of course, the mother's understanding, but at the same time, like they're hungry, they need food. In one panel, she's standing up and of course she's pregnant. So I'm assuming Abby's gonna have a brother or sister. But Abby was determined to ravage whatever that ship has to offer. Specifically, one of the biggest ones they saw in that scene. As Abby was hanging out with other Ravagers, they were all kind of circulating, talking about that, hey, the security is going to be heavier, this is a bigger cargo, this is going to be more dangerous. Of course, the conversation kind of leads to, this is why we have a lot of us, so there could be a shot. And of course, Abby's the lead one that's going into this ship, and it takes off. It's taking off, it's like, ah! Meanwhile, at the command center type area, the communicator was talking to the captain saying, hey, there's some sort of like explosion somewhere in this quarters. He's like, oh, it can't be just coincidence. I think we're being ravaged. The top heaviest guards come through to see what's going on. As Abby's going through these nooks and crannies like in the first book. With the big old shootout, the Ravagers somehow found a way to get into like an escape pod and go fly back home. But Abby's stuck. And it's just like, okay, I guess I'm here in this ship. I'm here for the ride. And for the next 8 weeks, Abby's kind of going through the nooks and crannies again, seeing where the kitchen is, befriending one of the chefs, mind you, going through this big old cities, because like in that ship, again, like in the first book, there's just like big old cities in there. I'm assuming it's the elite and the rich. They can afford this. Dystopian connections. And on that note, I'm gonna keep it right there. You know me, I just like to tease, ain't gonna tell you the whole thing. But yes, I'm liking it so far. Of course, I'm gonna pick up issue 2, I believe in December. Besides the superhero stuff, I love a good old-fashioned sci-fi. And for you collectors out there, I can only assume that if these books kind of take off, The Devil's Cut it may be considered some sort of key. Say like the book Gone is something that gets, you know, optioned for a show or a movie, those collectors are always gonna get the devil's cut because that's technically like a first appearance. But since it doesn't really connect, but it kind of does, the issue 1 of Gone could be also a collective item too. So for you collectors out there, snag them out there before it's too late. Who knows? It could be one of those conversations later on down the road where you go, hey Andy, remember when you said this book might be worth money later? Yeah, I was stupid, and we're drinking a beer at a bar. Or it could be this story where, again, you're laughing with Andy going, hey Andy, remember when you said that book was gonna be worth money? And I'm drinking at my bar in my mansion going, yeah, crazy, right? At the end of these stories, at least there's a beer. And that about does it for Andy's Comic Stash. And before I go, like I was mentioning, Legends Comics and Games and I are gonna be heading to Florida, Orlando specifically, for Ranger Stop Orlando. Those dates are gonna be November 10th through the 12th. I don't have a number booth just yet, but hey, we're invited, we got a booth. So if you happen to be in Florida or you're gonna be going to Ranger Stop and you see me on by, say hi. Thank you very much for watching this video. And like I said, guys, like this video and subscribe to my channel. Any further support, links are on the description below. And like I always say, read comic books, trade safe lives, and support your local comic book shop. See you later, dudes.